The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of Green Acres and our guests. These general gardening tips and suggestions may work for you, as well as those from alternative sources. When using any garden products or tools, read and follow all label directions. And learn how to make your yard summer strong at bewatersmart.info.
The Green Acres Garden Podcast is the podcast dedicated to helping gardeners hone their growing skills while we celebrate our love of plants. So whether you're new to growing or a seasoned gardener, you're sure to learn something new. Join the fun as we have conversations with world-class growers, passionate green thumbs, and professional garden experts from Green Acres Nursery and Supply. Listen every week. We'll answer questions you didn't know you had. All right, welcome one and all to the show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Green Acres Garden Podcast, the home for all you green thumbs out there, people who love plants and gardening. This is it. This is the best podcast for you. I think we're the number one garden podcast that releases on Tuesdays. Yeah. That's called the Green Acres Garden Podcast.
Yes, the number one.
Definitely number one. Welcome one and all. So glad to have you. My name's Kevin Jordan, a fellow plant lover, teacher by day, garden podcaster by night.
Ooh.
Let's go. We got a great episode, an incredible guest. But before we get to that, let's talk about some stuff. Austin?
Okay, what's going on, buddy? I'm suffering from a little bit of allergies, so I might sound a little weird. But Kevin, what's going on in your garden?
We've been planting like wild at the school.
Yes.
We're about halfway there. We're still harvesting some cool season stuff. We're getting the last of the peas out of there. Of course, our peppers and tomatoes are almost all in. We're going to grow vertically, so we got cucumbers and melons going in that we're all going to grow up panels and grow.
What kind of trellis are you using?
You know, last year I used like a flexible plastic fence, like a temporary one, and it worked pretty good, and we may try that again, but honestly, we have a little bit of budget left over, so I may do some shopping and get some of the metal like panels, like the cattle panels where it has like the larger squares. So I want to maybe experiment a little bit this year, but for me, just vertical growing, it kind of goes back to our past episodes. We talked about square foot gardening and utilizing every square foot and going actually not just on the ground square foot, but vertically and using verticality in the garden to just maximize what you can grow in the space you have. And for us, that's been fantastic. I've been loving that. On the home front, dude, the babies just turned one.
Yay,
and,
congrats.
They, so before, I mean, last year, I would, in the past, I gardened for fun as a passion, became my profession. Now, after seeing how much these children are eating, I think I need to grow and plant more, and it's going to become like a necessity.
Yes.
There are like a couple of hungry fruit bats just waddling around the house, just begging me for more fruits and vegetables and
that's
food.
what they like? They like fruits and veggies?
They
That's
love
good.
it, man. They're all about it.
Oh, awesome.
For sure. But yeah, it's been great. I'm looking so forward to this season. It's been awesome. My grandma called me. She loved the shout out the other episode.
Yeah.
So
you know what? Let me get a shout out in.
Absolutely.
You know who listens all the time and gives me, she'll even call me about it, is my mom. So I just want to say thank you, Mom, for like supporting me and listening to the show and giving me feedback. It's been very helpful, and I think it's made the show better. So thank you so much for doing that.
And please don't roundhouse kick me anymore.
Oh, yeah. You'll never forget the time she kicked you.
Oh, man. I'm like, show me how to do this. And she showed me. Well, we have an amazing guest this week, someone whose pedigree and background and just career in the plant world, horticulture, agriculture, it's pretty impressive. So this week we got to sit down with Katie Tammany of Monrovia. So Monrovia, they're here on the West Coast, but I think they're spread. They have a couple different growing grounds and facilities spread around the United States, but they're a production nursery. They actually grow the plants that get brought to the retail nurseries and get sold. They're usually the ones you see in those pretty lovely kind of olive
cans.
Green pots, and just beautiful plants. Typically, their stuff's really, really nice. I've always had good fortune and good luck with when I grow their stuff. So, I mean, not to give them too much love, but their stuff's pretty nice.
And we have lots of Monrovia at Green Acres, right?
Totally, right? And usually they're a lot of really beautiful ornamental plants, but as we'll see when we get in this episode, some of them are edible as well. And so edible ornamentals are a thing as well, but this is an episode if you want really interesting plant recommendations, knowledge about upcoming new hybrids and new cultivars of plants that they're working on. This is pretty cool, and we get a little background of how the whole nursery operation works there. Katie Tammany, former editor of Sunset Magazine.
Wow,
right?
that's huge, right?
So if you ever read a Sunset Western Garden book, that's Katie. She did that for years and years and years, I think well over a decade. She's now the chief marketing officer over there at Monrovia. So she knows her stuff. ton of plant knowledge, and honestly, just a lovely person.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. We had a great time with Katie. We hung out with her at the Green Acres in Roseville. Let's go ahead and check out that interview now. Here we go.
So I'm sitting here with Katie Tammany of Monrovia fame, former 10-year editor of the Sunset Western magazine, Sunset?
Yes, so I was the editor-in-chief of Sunset Magazine and the Western Garden Book.
Love them. That's where I cut my teeth.
Right, Sunset Publishing. Yeah, I was there for almost 20 years, and I was editor-in-chief for 10.
And now you're at Monrovia.
Yes, it's a great segue, really deepening my interest in gardening and plants.
Can you explain to our listeners maybe what Monrovia is and what's your guys' mission?
Sure. We really do feel like craftsmanship and quality is at the heart of what we do. Monrovia is actually going to celebrate its 100th birthday next year,
Happy birthday.
Yeah. And when you think about that, a company that started in 1926, what Harry Rosedale, who founded it, he was an immigrant who knew a little bit about the nursery business when he came to Southern California. And in 1926, he started the company with 40 acres. And there's a few things that Harry did was very unique in the industry, and it led to a lot of interesting innovation over time. So the first thing is, before Harry, most shrubs and trees that people would buy at a garden center were actually planted in the ground and then dug up and put in a container and shipped.
Earl, that's the one you want? You're like, yep, okay, let me dig it up for you.
And so nothing was grown in containers. And Harry was the one that really started growing plants in containers at the nursery all the way until shipping, because he knew that's better for the plant. So that was the first thing that Harry was...
To reduce all that transplant shock.
Exactly. And then Harry was also really interested in the soil that plants were growing in. So he and his team invested in understanding what unique soil blends each plant needed. You know, what the soil mix needs, what a camellia needs for the soil is very different than what a blueberry needs or what a succulent needs to start out with, to get it really well rooted. So he invested a lot in the soil.
Smart.
Yeah. And then the third thing that Harry was probably really known for was patenting plants. He was one of the first people that realized, a lavender is not like every other lavender. That varieties make a difference.
There's so much variation.
Right, that genetics make a difference, that plants can have longer blooming, periods or bloom earlier. And so he started patenting a lot of the plants that Monrovia was growing. And that has really continued today with our interest in growing, 200 new varieties every year. So we started in Southern California, in Monrovia, California.
Yeah.
And Harry, saw that company through, the Depression. His descendants, the next generation, expanded the nursery. And so now Monrovia is the largest grower in the United States of premium ornamental landscaping plants. And now Monrovia has nurseries in Oregon, Visalia, California, and Cairo, Georgia. So we're kind of all over the U.S., and that enables us to grow just about everything.
I love it, because your plants, like I said, they're beautiful. The quality is always there. I don't want to fanboy out too much, but they always look really nice. What do you think that is? Like, what is actually, maybe you've already mentioned it, but like, what is truly making you guys stand apart? What makes Monrovia's plants special or unique, in your opinion?
I think what makes them special is, it starts with, we're very selective about what we grow. We're very choosy, and we get to work with breeders around the world. We also, though, have craftsmen. We don't call our employees, they're craftsmen. And that's because they work with their hearts, minds, hands to craft, to plant beautifully. We prune more often than other growers might. We really think about, the branching, the shaping of a plant. So that goes to that quality. The interest that we have in soil and adding beneficial fungus to our soil mixes, mycorrhizae, is added to all of our soil blends. That really helps roots get established in the garden.
It supercharges them.
Yeah, it does. It's great. Exactly. It's a supercharger. It's like a way to inoculate that plant when you plant it. It helps them stand up to disease, better. So all those things go into a Monrovia plant. That's part of our quality.
I appreciate that. So Katie, I imagine being at Monrovia and these growing grounds, at least nearby, you get a lot of exposure to kind of what's new, what's interesting, and kind of what endures.
Right.
Plants that are going to be great and useful year after year. What are some of your favorite, just go-to bulletproof shrubs? Someone's like, I need 2 or 3 shrubs choices for the full blasting sun, zone 9B, where we're at.
Uh-huh.
What would you recommend? Because you mentioned that you got to have the right plant, the right place.
Right. Do you know what's really great right now in the Sacramento area is Ilex Emerald Colonnade. Now, it's not necessarily a flowering, but it is such a fantastic hedge shrub. Gets 12 feet tall max. So this would be a fantastic shrub to plant along your fence, to create that kind of serene green feeling in your backyard. If you want to have that calm green just kind of continue up the fence walls, I think Ilex Emerald Colonnade is perfect. It takes shearing really well, but you actually don't need to do much of that because it has a natural pyramid kind of habit.
Just grows upright. It's really lush and thick. It's an ilex, it's a holly. It does well in the South. That's where we got it from Dr. Durr, a fantastic breeder. But it is really taken off out here. That's my go-to. All right.
I'd say.
Same question, Katie, but now I want a beautiful bulletproof shrub, but this is a pretty shady spot.
Yes.
What would you recommend for that?
Well, we have a line of hydrangeas, Seaside Serenade Hydrangeas. Now, what's different about these hydrangeas, they were bred for the cut flower market. So their stems...
They're extra beautiful.
Yes, and also their stems are thicker, their leaves are thicker. They don't wilt so much in the heat. They stay really nice and sturdy. They're pretty compact, 3 to 4 feet in height. And excellent cut flowers, if you love cut flowers.
Are they white, pink, blue,
well,
purple?
This is the wonderful thing. There's 12 of them. They're every shade you can imagine. If you love, a violet, really turning toward blue if you acidify, the soil.
Oh, yeah.
We've got Newport hydrangea, that's fantastic. If you want something that's more like pink red, we've got Martha's Vineyard. They're all named after coastal places, even though they're not really coastal plants. They do really well here.
Yeah, you'll see them in the spring here.
Yeah.
They're just coming back to life right now.
So that's a go-to for me is, because I love a flowering shrub that makes a great cut flower, that you can, I love plants that are productive in the garden, and then there's, maybe you get an edible, plant, you get fruits from
Now you're
them.
speaking my language.
Right? I love mixing edible shrubs, we think of them as like edible perennials or edible shrubs, into the landscape.
Plant once, harvest forever.
Right, and you don't need to have all of your edibles in like a raised bed area, kind of
separated.
Sequestered. Yeah. I really encourage people to mix them into the landscape. So we've got quite a few choices that.
Well, let's get to it. You can have them dotted or mixed, and they can be blended just naturally into your landscape. I've got some blueberries in my front yard that are just kind of hanging out for that same reason. What are some edible plants or edible perennials?
Right, well, let's start with blueberries.
Yeah.
Because Monrovia has Bountiful Blue, which we introduced about 10 years ago. That is a favorite of mine because it looks wonderful when it's not producing berries. It just has really beautiful foliage, especially in the fall. It gets this nice sort of bronzy foliage.
Or like semi-evergreen kind of?
Yeah, and it stays nice and compact. So if you're looking for shrub in the mix that's like 3 to 4 feet high, and it has that bronzy foliage in the fall, and then wonderful fruit, that's a great choice. But we also are introducing this year a couple of new blueberries I'm super excited about. So one is Bountiful Baby, so kind of a cousin of Bountiful Blue. And this one stays very compact. I almost call it a patio blueberry. I mean, if somebody wants to grow a blueberry in a container on the edge of their deck or patio, this is a great one for that.
Space is limited.
Right. The fruit is pretty small but really juicy. That's a wonderful choice. And then another one we have that's really quite stunning when you see it, and you will see it at Green Acres, is Bountiful Belle. And that one has like an icy pink new foliage, which just gives it this...
Just pops a little bit.
Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. And these little pink stems. So, for me to talk about the foliage on a blueberry plant, it's got both things going for it.
Yeah,
and that has incredible fruit too. So, blueberries, I find personally, can be kind of finicky for people. So you really need to pay attention to the soil.
They got those fine, shallow surface roots. They get too dried out.
Exactly. So they need to be babied, if you're gonna do a blueberry. So my go-to, like as a gift for somebody, when they buy a new house or something, what I like to give them is a pomegranate, our angel red pomegranate. I really feel like there's no better pomegranate out there.
Yeah.
This is incredible. It gets, it's moderate growing. It'll get up to 10 feet, in height. Wonderful foliage color, incredible fruit.
Oh yeah.
So I love to give that as a gift when people are moving into a new place, and that's.
Did I tell you I was moving? I guess so now.
I'll send you one, Kevin.
It's funny you mentioned pomegranates. Every year, I always have a couple students who are like, "Why don't we grow pomegranates here at the school?" And it's just, we just don't, we ran out of space.
Yes,
but
so that's
people
be a
love
bigger
pomegranates. It's just one of those things. I didn't realize.
Yeah, so angel red. Look for
Angel
that
red?
one.
Okay.
That's a good one. Another kind of unusual edible that people have gotten more interested in growing at home is kiwi.
Love kiwi.
Yeah, and you can grow, kiwi up over a trellis. It can become a decorative.
Strong.
Right.
They get abundant. We grew some with my students years ago, and we had one male doing all the heavy lifting, and then all the ladies were there actually doing the work. And I mean, it was 5 females, 1 male, and we'd get a couple 100 pounds each year once they were mature.
It's incredible. So we do a couple kiwis that are really interesting. One is Kiwi Magic, where we put the male and female in the pot together.
Oh, nice, smart.
So you have them, you've already got your pollinizers. And then Sweet and Solo Kiwi just kind of is self-pollinating. So
there you go.
That's a great choice too. And they're easy to grow, especially around here. So I would encourage people, if you want to do something a little different this year in your edible garden, think about a kiwi.
Grow them vertical?
Yes, yeah. And that's interesting too, whether it's, thinking about edibles like as fruit trees or or vines like grapes. I think grapes would be another excellent choice. We introduced a grape series about 5 years ago that are super sweet. Now these aren't, you're not going to...
Table grapes?
Yeah, these are table grapes. And they were bred for the grocery market. So they're not...
They're big,
they're
juicy,
big,
seedless.
Juicy, exactly, and they're really sweet. So I think that at Green Acres, I think you have Zestful. Lollipop is that's a good grape to grow.
Sounds delicious.
Really thrive here.
The naming on that one worked out right. If it makes my mouth water, just
so those are a
it.
few great edibles, and it's interesting what I was talking about before. Growing edibles in the landscape is part of this trend that we're seeing a lot, where homeowners and landscape designers are creating kind of a garden of abundance, where you're working in the edibles among flowering shrubs, among pollinator plants, and kind of this wonderful Garden of Eden. Like I said, don't leave the edibles off to the side, mix them in. And it's making us think about, when we're choosing what varieties Monrovia should grow, we're really looking at beautiful edible plants. What's going to look really like artichokes. Artichokes make a fantastic...
Their foliage now.
Their foliage is
so
incredible.
Gorgeous.
In early spring,
it's like that silvery color, the texture, the size.
Right, the uniqueness of that leaf. So
there's a lot of people here I'll see in the garden forums, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't even harvest it anymore." They're like, "I just love the flowers in the plant."
It's true. Yeah, the big purple flowers are so much fun.
Yeah, talk about your cut flowers. You can go out there and make your own little artichoke bouquet, dry them out.
Exactly. And then there's, herbs, too, that you can mix in the landscape. And, we have there's a lot of different kinds of rosemary, but one that I think is great, for instance, for like a Father's Day gift is barbecue rosemary, which it's a straighter stem rosemary.
There we go.
So you can skewer things right
That'd be fun.
right on the rosemary
Just go
stem.
and just kind of shake off those leaves real quick.
So kind of fun.
You said how many different varieties do you guys introduce every year?
About 200 every year.
And these are coming, so you're growing these on your grounds, but you said that you work with breeders, people that are actually doing that work.
Right.
What's that like? And how do you
that's fascinating. We get sent plants and we go and look at plants around the world, honestly. We go to big shows, in Europe and
take me with you. Yeah. Let's go.
So one plant, for instance, that is new for us this year, that I think people are going to get super excited about when they see it is a new Mandevilla called Bluephoria.
Mandevilla, love it, beautiful.
So Bluephoria is sort of blue. I mean,
is it properly? Because they're pinks, they're reds, they're yellows.
It's a purpley blue. It starts out pink and then it turns this wonderful purple color, and it's a really early blooming Mandevilla, which is very exciting. So it's blooming right now. And that's new this year. That's from Suntory breeder, and they do fantastic work in Mandevillas. We grow a lot of.
They're so beautiful, and I think it's one of those vines too, and those flowers where you're like, I kind of want a tropical look or something that looks like the Garden of Eden a little bit. Where they do that. I feel like they give you this kind of has this tropical viney kind of look. The flowers come out like these beautiful little trumpets.
We look for Mandevillas too, where the bloom isn't just on the end of the stem, where it's really like all along the stem. Another Mandevilla, giant peach that I think I know you carried it last year. I think you're carrying it again this spring. That was a new one, and that was a new color that hadn't existed before last year. Now we'll have more of it this year. So Bluephoria, and then the other one I wanted to mention is double pink. So the double pink is exactly that, but it has this other bloom in the middle of it.
More petals.
And what's interesting about it, if you just let it kind of mound a little bit in a container, it almost looks like a really cool azalea, but with a tropical look. It's hard to explain, but when we were I was at a tropical plant show actually on the East Coast, and we had double pink Mandevilla in our booth, and we had Bluephoria, and it stopped people as they walked by. They had never seen anything like that. So those are two Mandevillas that you're going to have at Green Acres this spring.
Can't wait to see them. It's always fun to just kind of walk the nursery and just kind of see what's blooming, see what's new, what's different. There's always something new.
Oh yeah, and I think if you're trying to create that sort of relaxing feel in your backyard, you want a few tropical vines like that, like a Mandevilla, or something that just makes you think, of vacations you've been on, paradise that you've been to, whether that's Hawaii or other locations. Having a little bit of that in your yard here is really great.
Yeah, I could take a little taste of that.
Yeah.
Got to ask a quick question though. Dipladenia, what happened? It changed, the name changed from Dipladenia to Mandevilla?
Yeah, what's funny is, when I talk to our CEO, who's really a plantsman himself, he finds most of our Mandevillas. It's kind of like Dipladenia has just sort of joined it's the same thing.
Were they different, or is it the same?
Really.
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good to know.
So
I always get
just
confused.
Kind of faded away.
That's awesome.
It sort of was a false, difference that doesn't really matter. So it's just a Mandevilla.
It's incredible to see what these breeders, with just years, all the work and the tediousness of it. They have to the breeding and the pollen. It's just incredible to see all that work come to fruition.
It is, and yet the other thing that is really exciting that happens is that a lot of our plants are actually found at the nursery itself, with a really observant craftsman noticing there's something different about that plant. And it's it's a naturally occurring sport of a variety we already had, and we'll try to propagate it, get it into production, see if it'll hold. And we've introduced a lot of plants that way too.
That's pretty cool.
Which is pretty amazing. In fact, there's one plant that we found that way. One of our nursery managers in Oregon spotted it. It's Little Ragu, laurel, which you have. It's a wonderful shrub. When you asked me about my favorite shrubs, that's another one that's
laurels are cool.
That's great, and it's a bay leaf. So
I would say bay laurels. That's your edible herb, right. A huge one.
So I would plant this right out my back door, so I could go out and grab a leaf when I need it. And that one was literally found at our Oregon nursery as a sport that then we nurtured, tested, and produced, and now it's one of our top selling plants, so you never know.
So you're saying as a sport. Can you tell our listeners what you're referring to when you're saying this plant was a sport? What is it?
A naturally occurring, so a sport, I guess a sort of a simple way to say it is just a naturally occurring change in a variety.
I love it. That's cool.
And then it's, something stable that can, will repeat, so you don't just have a one-off. I'm not sure a horticulture expert would describe it that way, but that's how I think of it.
Mother Nature is an incredible hybridizer herself.
Yes, yeah. I think that's one of the, my favorite things about this job is that it's a reminder how magical, nature is all the time. Another no-fuss shade plant, now that I'm thinking about it, is Loropetalum.
Oh, Chinese French flower.
And I know people are like, oh yeah, Loropetalum is boring, but no.
I wouldn't say that.
There's actually so many interesting new colors in Loropetalum.
The confetti, their flowers are literally like tassels of confetti.
Yeah.
And their foliage is gorgeous too.
Gorgeous, yeah.
We were up at this property not too long ago, and this gentleman had like a mature one, and it was pruned up like a specimen, like a multi-trunk, maybe 8 feet tall, and it was just, it was beautiful.
You can do that with Loropetalum. We have patio trees that we, train the...
like a single stalk and then little lollipop top.
And that's really,
I'm not sure if you guys do this, but I've seen them espaliered before to get them into tight locations.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Because the foliage is always, it's a little bit darker than everything. It kind of stands out from all the kind of the green. And then once it starts blooming, man, those pinks just pop.
Incredible. Well, and that's part of a trend that we're seeing too with breeders where they're introducing bolder, brighter colors. So in the Loropetalum, for instance, you have sizzling pink, midnight moxie, really, really bright, intense pink fringe that's so eye-catching. And that's one of the key trends. I was talking about this garden of abundance. Another one is, we're just calling it bold, beautiful color, where colors like orange, which are kind of like, what, are making a comeback. People are really getting interested.
I didn't know it ever left. I love orange. Makes me happy.
Right. Well, that's good. Yeah. Sometimes people have been like, it doesn't go with anything, but actually it does.
Have like a color scheme they're trying to like.
Right, that they're trying to achieve. But, that's another trend as we're talking about, energy in the garden is that I think people want a little bit more of a wilder look, these days. We survey homeowners every summer and we ask them, what they're interested in, what landscape styles they're attracted to, and more natural looking and wilder is kind of, it's going up in popularity.
Everything's just not just geometric cubes.
Right. And I think, people want to have maybe a little bit more of a meadow look in the front yard, or they're interested in that. And so something that we suggest for people to think about if they want that is to look for compact, grasses and mix them in with, pollinator perennials. You can, mix in a few natives, but they don't all have to be natives. And in fact, you're probably going to be happier if they're not all natives. You want to mix. What we tell people is really think about biodiversity, having a lot of choice and attracting a lot of different kinds of pollinators and insects to your garden. That's really going to be it's going to have a healthy impact on the ecosystem. Just plant what's climate appropriate, but, even, in that window, there's so much choice of what's climate appropriate.
For sure. So sometimes people find their favorite plants. I know there's a huge craze for native plants right now. Right. Is there anything that you guys grow that's beautiful that people might crave that actually is a native?
Well, yes, the Mina Verbena. Isn't that a great name?
Mina Verbena?
Yes. So that is from the Cedros Island off the California coast.
We'll count it.
Okay. It's really got these delicate purple, it's not like It's not like other verbenas. It's got this more, I was talking about that wild look, natural look. It's got this kind of fairy-like bloom at the ends that, you were talking about, something that catches the breeze, looks really beautiful. This is definitely that. It's a wonderful mounding evergreen, really fragrant purple flowers. It actually will flower year-round in mild, weather. Probably here it'll do really well. It enjoys full sun. It's fast-growing. Spring through fall, it's just
ticking all the right boxes.
Yes. So I would think people really want to get their hands on this one.
What was it? De la Mina Verbena?
Yes, right.
All right.
Easy to remember.
All right, I'll keep my eyes out. Well, Katie, Tammany, thank you so much for making time for us. I learned a ton from you, so thank you for the education. I appreciate it. Sure. Your expertise and your experience is just paid off. I just loved it so much, and thank you for your work. Keep the good things coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. This was so much fun. And I can't, wish people a good spring enough. This is going to be a fantastic spring. Get out there, get your hands in the soil, try some new plants, have a little fun.
What a great interview that was with Katie Tammany. Austin, did you like it?
Oh, that was great. Katie was a treat to be with. And, I learned a lot of new plant varieties.
It was cool even that they, I loved hearing about even the native varieties that they're cultivating over there. I love hearing about natives. But the edible ornamentals. After the interview, we actually walked out in the nursery and got to look at some of the plants she was discussing. That mandevilla that she brought up was so stunning in real life. The blossom, it was so intricate and had like extra petals in it. And it was really cool, actually. It's something that I noticed she didn't really even bring up. It came with a packet of like predatory mites.
Oh.
So that's organic control at its finest.
Really? It comes with that? That's
it was
cool.
attached to the side of these little packets. And I asked her about it. She's like, that's kind of new. And very cool. I've seen how in some like large greenhouses, they'll actually use like leaf blowers with attachments and actually blow these little tiny mites around the greenhouse onto the plants. They look like little tiny red, they look scary, look like little bad bugs, but they're not. They're really good. And they're predatory. So
That's interesting.
They go after some of those harmful bugs that you don't want. So I loved it. It's always really kind of cool to kind of peel back the curtain with an industry professional, someone who's like at ground level on the growing grounds. Monrovia is pretty big. It's a pretty big deal. But it's cool to hear about kind of how the sausage is made a little bit.
Yeah.
And to hear about the passion, the enthusiasm, and the history of these companies. I'm not into like company worship or brand, like that, but it's still pretty cool. And I love hearing the stories of how these companies, these brands, these nurseries came about. It usually oftentimes starts with a single person. And then it evolves over time and gets passed down from family to family, and then it kind of expands, and it's like this wonderful story. Just like, you're a storyteller with your movies, Austin, and so you can appreciate a good story.
I do. Yeah, definitely. And, I agree. I totally agree. It's cool to hear about the history of Monrovia. And then Katie, what I really like is the cutting edge stuff, the new things, like you mentioned, that are coming down.
And the ways to use some of the plants she was providing for us. Like, this is a great hedge. Oh, this one's an edible ornamental. I just loved it.
It's good stuff. So big thank you to Katie. Thanks for joining us and sharing your knowledge. And I hope our listeners are inspired to plant these really cool things that you guys grow. So
those plants are definitely worth a look for sure.
Yes.
Especially if you're into like making your front garden, your home landscape, whatever it is, just a little bit more productive, a little bit more striking. Those are great plants to start with.
Cool. Yep. And I also want to plug an event coming up.
Yeah.
So one of our recent guests, Janie Santos.
She was great.
Dig, plant, water, repeat. Yeah, she was awesome. She also loves all these kinds of plants, right? She's into that stuff.
She appreciates beauty for sure. She loves those flowers.
She's got an event coming up at the Elk Grove Green Acres on May 3rd. So that's this Saturday. And she's sharing her Proven Winners Best for the West collection. She's going to provide tips and techniques on how to grow them, care for them, and she's also going to introduce her new book. And if you want to meet Janie, I recommend pop over to the Elk Grove location this Saturday, May 3rd from 10 to 12. And then if you can't make that one, the following week, the Roseville store is going to do the same event with her. And that's on Saturday, May 10th, 10 to 12. 12 p.m. So if you love Janie, like we all
do here,
go meet her, talk to her, and learn all about her new collection from Proven Winners. All right, so
that sounds like fun too. And the best for the West, those were all the plants that she kind of trialed and worked with and kind of put them through their paces to make sure that they could tolerate and still thrive given our hot, dry conditions here in our summers.
Yep, she grew that stuff out at her place in Davis, and she gets a ton of sun there. She has no shade there. So all that stuff that does well, that's in her collection.
So cool.
Yeah. So that's all for this week. Kevin, go ahead and take us out.
Man, another awesome week getting to meet incredible people. Katie Tammany, former editor, Sunset Magazine, now the chief marketing officer of Monrovia. Pretty cool stuff. Man, I love meeting these people, Austin.
Oh, yeah.
But until next week, garden friends, honestly, I've got so much work to do. So like I said, I garden podcast by night, and I'm a garden teacher by day. And man, this is the busy season. So if you're like me, get out in that garden, get some work done, and meet us back here next week for another amazing episode of the Green Acres Garden Podcast. My name's Kevin Jordan. Thanking you for being here, and we'll see you next time, garden friends. Happy gardening to you all, and please never stop growing.